The cold blade pressed against my throat, the sharp edge biting into my skin as Victor's mocking voice echoed through the room. "Now you're a real cuckold," he sneered, his face twisted with cruel amusement. "Watch while we have fun with her." Sophia, my wife of 10 years, lounged on the couch, an air of superiority about her, sipping wine as though we were at some casual gathering. Her black dress clung to her curves, her heels dangling from one foot, her posture languid and smug. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a sadistic smile. "Watch, bastard," she taunted. "Maybe you'll learn how to treat me properly." Her words were venomous, each one a sharp jab deep into my chest. They all laughed, their laughter filling the air like a symphony of mockery. But what they didn't know, what none of them could see, was that this was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. I was bound to a chair, leather straps digging painfully into my wrists and ankles, helpless in my own living room. The weight of Victor, the largest of the three, loomed over me, his face twisted in disdain. Emile and Marco stood to either side, their expressions smug and triumphant. Sophia and I had once been the golden couple, the envy of everyone around us. She was captivating, sharp, and stunning, a woman with ambition to match. Our paths had crossed at a luxury hotel in Vienna where I worked as the operations manager, and she was an events coordinator. The chemistry between us had been instant, our connection undeniable. Within a year, we were married and building a life together in Zurich. But as time passed, the cracks in our relationship became impossible to ignore. My demanding work schedule had created distance between us, and Sophia, ever in need of attention, had grown restless. She thrived on admiration, and I was no longer able to provide it the way I used to. I noticed the signs, the secretive phone calls, the late nights out, the way she pulled away when I reached for her. But I pushed those thoughts aside, convincing myself it was just a phase. That was until 3 weeks ago when I stumbled upon the messages. Her phone buzzed late at night while she was in the shower, and the name Marco flashed across the screen. I hesitated, torn between guilt and curiosity. But in the end, curiosity won out.
What I found shattered me.
The messages were explicit, filled with promises of stolen nights, heated passion, and a love that wasn't mine to claim. And Marco wasn't the only one. Victor and Emile had their own threads, each message more damning than the last. Sophia wasn't just cheating, she was living a double life. I confronted her the next evening, laying the evidence bare. Screenshots of the messages, receipts for hotel stays, and photos from the private investigator I had hired. She didn't deny it. In fact, she laughed, her tone dripping with disdain. "You've been playing detective," she sneered, pouring herself a glass of wine. How pathetic. I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. "Sophia," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "How could you do this?" She shrugged, unbothered, as though what she was doing was perfectly justified. "Because you're boring, Elias," she said, her voice cold and cruel. "You bury yourself in your work, and you don't see me anymore. Victor, Marco, Emile, they know how to treat me. They make me feel alive." Her words stung like poison, but I kept my composure. "You're throwing everything away. For them? For fun?" I asked, my voice icy. Sophia smirked. "And you'll never be man enough to stop me." I didn't know it at the time, but that conversation would be the turning point. Sophia must have told her lovers about our confrontation, because 2 nights later, I came home to find them all in my house. Victor was seated in my favorite chair, his feet carelessly propped up on the coffee table, while Marco and Emile stood nearby, their eyes gleaming with arrogance. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Victor and Emile entered, each holding a beer with an air of dominance, as if they owned the place. There was Sophia, seated between them, her laugh ringing through the room like a dagger to my chest. Before I could react, Victor stood, his towering frame blocking the doorway. "Sit down," he commanded, his voice thick with menace. I didn't move. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice calm but firm. Victor chuckled, his smirk dripping with arrogance. "You don't give the orders here?" He pulled a gleaming knife from his pocket, its blade catching the light. "Now, sit down." Fury surged inside me, but I knew I was outnumbered. Reluctantly, I sat in the chair they shoved me into, and Emile swiftly bound my wrists and ankles with leather straps. Victor leaned in close, his breath hot against my face. "Now you're a real cuckold. Watch while we have fun with her." Sophia's cold smirk sent a chill down my spine. "Watch, bastard. Maybe you'll learn something." Their laughter echoed in my ears as the humiliation crushed me. They mocked, degraded, and belittled me, their actions a constant reminder of my helplessness. But even as I sat there, bound and broken, my mind was working. I made a vow this would not go unanswered. Every detail, every word, every sneer, I stored it all in my mind. I promised myself they would pay. The first target was Victor. I spent days studying him, learning his routine. He worked as a bouncer at an exclusive nightclub, and every night after his shift, he walked alone to his car down a dark, secluded alley. It was perfect, isolated and quiet. I followed him one night, a baseball bat concealed under my coat. As he reached his car, I stepped out of the shadows. "Elias," he laughed, his voice full of mockery. "What are you going to do, huh?" I didn't respond. Instead, I swung the bat with all my fury. The crack of impact against his ribs was satisfying, but I didn't stop. Blow after blow, I unleashed all the anger, all the humiliation he had forced upon me. When I was done, Victor lay on the ground, gasping, barely conscious. His body was battered and bloodied, a reminder of his arrogance. I left him there, knowing someone would find him, but he would never forget that night. Emile and Marco were next, but their fates would be far worse. I had collected evidence, photos, videos, messages, everything I needed to destroy their lives. Emile, with his perfect family and facade of respectability, was first. His wife received the explicit details of his affair. She filed for divorce the next day, taking the kids and half his assets. His employer learned of the scandal and fired him, leaving him penniless and alone. Marco, the rising star in the art world, was next. I exposed him to the media, ensuring his reputation was tarnished forever. Galleries abandoned him, clients fled, and his once promising career crumbled to dust. And then there was Sophia. I served her with divorce papers and froze our joint accounts. I made sure she had nothing left, no money, no reputation, no allies. The woman who once mocked me now begged for mercy. Months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out over the city lights. Victor was still in the hospital, his injuries a permanent reminder of his cruelty. Emile was scraping by with odd jobs, his family gone. Marco had fled the city, his name tarnished in the art world. As for Sophia, she was a shadow of the woman she had once been. Her glamorous life reduced to ashes. The best revenge is not just destruction. It's ensuring they live with the weight of their actions, day in and day out. As I sipped my drink, a thought crossed my mind. Some betrayals don't break us. They forge us into something stronger. And stronger I had become.